Hello and welcome to More Than A Game, a podcast dedicated to the Premier League, the A-League and more. Today on the show, Jose good, Pep bad. City struggling at home but cruising in Europe. Some things stay the same, but others stay the same. Like Man United getting the rub of VAR at home, Villa playing like Villa, and everyone seemingly hating international football for all sorts of reasons. I'm Colby, and I'm joined today by Jesse, Damo, and George. Boys, how are we all? Might go to you first, Damo, because you're telling us about your outfit before the pod.
Yeah, look, it's good to be back. I've been on the bench for a while. Good to be back in the first team. It sounds a bit like my actual football career, but I'm wearing only tops of fraudulent clubs at the moment. So the Sheffield United kit was still in the wash, so that's why I didn't wear that one.
And you've gone the bucket hat too, and we were saying it needs to be branded Kappa as well. So listeners, if anyone's out there who can point Damo in the direction of a Kappa bucket hat, preferably fraudulent club vintage, like maybe a Aston Villa bucket hat, that would be greatly appreciated.
Send me a link.
And Jesse, also joining us back on the pod today, mate. How are you?
Great to be here. I mean, I wish somebody would give me a heads up about the bucket hat situation. I mean, Damo looks like Sergio Aguero after maybe the Mad Monday Manchester City get together after they wrestled the title from Manchester United. So I definitely want to be on those vibes. That's for sure.
And different vibes over in the London studio. George, you've just got yourself a nice little AeroPress there, mate. How are you this morning?
just a lovely early start to a Sunday, boys. It's my usual routine to get up at this time on a Sunday, so it's all normal here. Really, really excited to get out and about. Oh, we're in lockdown. So.
Well, the roles have reversed. Now we're free to
go. You can live vicariously through the footballers who have just come back from international break, getting out and about and wherever the hell they want to go. So we can at least live vicariously.
Continental travel.
That's it. Even Andy's locked down now, I would assume. So catches up with us all eventually. But if you're listening to the podcast version of this show and you want to hear our match reviews sooner, head on over to our YouTube page and subscribe. And we've linked to that in the show notes to this pod. Otherwise, you can follow us on social media. We'll post links to the live shows before they happen. And that's about a day before the podcast goes out. Boys, big week of football. What stood out to you this week? Damo?
First thing that stood out to me was the young guy at Dortmund. I think he was 16 years old yesterday, and he made his first team debut. Makoko, I think you pronounce his name. He's the guy that made headlines over the last few years, scoring like 100 goals in the under-15s and that kind of stuff. And he became the youngest Bundesliga player of all time coming on the pitch last night. So not bad for a 16th birthday present.
It's an absolute factory, isn't it? Unbelievable. I thought you might have been referring to the other young guy at Dortmund, Erling Haaland, who's just like banging patties for fun.
Also just on fire.
Colby, if you could just, not steal my moment of the week, that'd be great. Thanks.
Let's go to you. Let's go to you, Jesse. Moment of the week.
Yeah, it was the other bloke. Barely turned bloke, Mr. Haaland, who stole the show this week for me. I was just gonna hop on the pod and talk about his 2020 Golden Boy Award. Which is, well-deserved in my opinion. There's a few other shouts across the continent, but I think he was definitely the deserved winner. But then he goes, yesterday he scored 4 second-half goals and a hat-trick in 15 minutes for Dortmund. So
just ridiculous.
The guy is an absolute force, and I think by now everybody can sort of definitely look at this guy and think he's going to be something even more special than he already is.
I read a stat that he's got more hat tricks in the Bundesliga than Muller or something outrageous today. That's just wild.
Which Muller? Thomas or Gert?
Thomas apparently. So, I mean,
I didn't do enough Gert Muller research to be able to that one today. So.
Gert Muller might still have them both, but he's definitely level with Thomas. So that's something. George, what about you, mate?
I'm going to go to Spain for mine, boys. And an interesting stat from last night's game, Atletico v Barcelona, was it was Atletico's first win ever over Barca in La Liga. So Simeone's first actual win in La Liga against Barcelona. So pretty crazy that it's taken them Simeone this long to actually get a victory in La Liga over Barca, and they got the win 1-0 and looked pretty good. So I think that was it. Go on, Cole.
Barca to be in an absolute state for it to happen, though, hasn't
it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
The other one I had was I know we all love the international break, so I won't harp on about it too much. But did anyone see Jack Grealish in Belgium in England's loss against Belgium?
How about that flick, George?
That was
filthy.
That was so. Yeah, a bit of Grealish love as well, boys, if you don't mind.
Hey, there's always a place for Grealish love on this podcast, as evidenced by Damo's bucket hat.
Yeah, Grealish would wear a Kappa bucket hat, I'm sure.
He would wear a Kappa bucket hat for sure. The only thing holding him back would be that undercut that he would love to show off. So, speaking of own goals, Damo, why don't we stick with you, mate? What's you in the wrong way this week?
Well, my own goal this week actually comes from Korea. Not sure if any of you guys saw this. There was, I think, a group of nearly 200 odd people put in a court case against Juventus, stating that when they played a preseason friendly in Korea, the fact that they benched Cristiano Ronaldo gave them emotional distress.
Yes.
So Juventus now have to pay back half the money of each person's ticket and $50,000 in compensation to the people who brought the case forward. I don't know if it's an own goal or if it's a moment of the week, but it's just something absolutely ridiculous that happened this week.
So a win for the lawyers.
Yeah.
Gee whiz.
Although if you pay all that money for an exhibition match, you expect to see the big dog, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm paying $90 to sit in the back row of the MCG and Ronaldo sits on the bench, I'm asking for $45 back for sure.
You're drinking your half-strength Great Northerns. You're going to need more than that to get you through, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember a couple of years ago when Roma, City, and Real Madrid came out, and we saw Cristiano at the G, and we're in like row Z, and he scored like this just pretty shitty goal. I think it was probably one of the worst goals he's ever scored in his career. Just dribbled over the line, and it was in a meaningless exhibition match friendly. And he goes over to the sidelines and does the big "see." And
I'm pretty sure
great.
that game he went off at halftime and he was just walking around in slides on the sideline for the rest of the game. There's paper airplanes coming from all around the ground.
Yeah, that's right. The airplanes were. So, like, would they have sued if he'd played the first 20 and just come off, or like, it's just quite funny. Where do you draw the line?
How many minutes of Ronaldo do you want or do you need for your money?
Yeah.
George, while we're with you, own goal for this week.
Again on the internationals, boys. Got to be Germany's performance against Spain. It was just, it was reminiscent of Brazil v Germany in that World Cup semi-final, just leaking goals. Yogi Love, like what's going on with Germany? Like since they won the World Cup, they've just been basically dog shit. And he did the whole regeneration thing, and it looks like they haven't improved despite all the talent they've got. So,
I need to go back to Muller and Boateng.
Yeah, got to get Boateng, Muller, yeah, that's right. So. Yeah.
I'm not sure how mobile Gert Muller's going to be getting around the field, though.
That's good.
Yeah, wheel him back out. Get Ozil back.
Get Ozil back.
I kind of wish we had the pod going. Had the pod going back then, actually, boys, because I was in Berlin when they won the thing, and also for the semi against Brazil, and it was actually like I was looking at people after about 4 goals, and there was just genuine horror in the German fans' eyes. They were sort of like, they're already dead, leave them alone,
The Simpsons line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But it was really interesting actually, because it did feel like a bit of a golden era of sort of all the experience culminating in that World Cup, and everything was going well. There was never an inkling back then that they wouldn't kick on and keep dominating. I mean, Götze had just scored the winning goal, and his career is pretty indicative
from again.
Yeah. So I don't know, George. I don't know why they haven't been able to kick on, to be honest.
What's less effective, Germany's team at the moment, or Mario Götze's thyroid gland?
Oh, shit. Gee whiz.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Jesse, why don't you
This is what we've missed. This is what we've missed with Damo out.
Wow. Well, that was outrageous. And speaking of outrageous, my own goal for the week was not just the international break. I'm not going to go there, guys. But David Coote, the referee for the Manchester United West Brom game. He's the same referee who, well, I guess only Liverpool fans really know, but he was the one that made the shocker for the Van Dijk ACL VAR blunder. So he's got a bit of a reputation amongst Liverpool fans now, and obviously they found his profile on social media, and he's got a picture of him at Old Trafford, and this cover photo is Old Trafford. So watching that game last night, and knowing that he's a bit of a boyhood fan of the club, obviously, and then just some of the disgraceful refereeing that was going on in that West Brom game. I really wonder how that guy is going to continue to referee at the highest level, because he's making a really, really bad job of it so far this year.
Yeah, more on that later. But first, why don't we stick with the international break? There's plenty of things happening, boys. Upsets, injuries,
COVID infections,
a lot of COVID. What about the international break? Did you like, if anything, and what didn't you like? Jesse, I think we know where your head's at. So why don't we start with you, George?
Oh, well, yeah, it was great to see all the borders open during a global pandemic. There was never going to be any issues with traveling around Europe when the cases are at record highs. So I think first and foremost, I think that was great. And the Nations League's very important, so you couldn't have deferred that. So I think that was probably my key takeaway. Like, why on earth is this happening right now when all it would have just taken was, hey, every country in Europe is in lockdown. Why are we risking this now? So I think that was probably my most important takeaway, aside from some of the football. There were actually some decent games. Like, there were some big games though. I think, as I mentioned, England-Belgium was interesting. You had your Spain, Germany's as well. So there were some decent matches on, and I guess it's a little taste of what we're going to get at the Euros. Hopefully in 6 months' time or whatever.
Well, Gareth Bale was fine though, wasn't he, boys? All I saw was that image that was going around of him just in the box, just watching the US Masters while Wales were playing. He didn't get an injury, didn't get COVID. He just and he caught up on the golf. It was the international break couldn't have gone better for Gareth.
He even managed to get on the field. So believe it or not, yeah. So no, it was sort of, and again, the other one you mentioned there, Colby, was some soft tissue injuries as well. So the players are just getting rammed at the moment, and it's just it's really, really difficult to see how this injury, sort of soft tissue injury crisis, is going to sort of slow down when they've got so many games. So I heard a stat last night that I think there's 80 games before New Year's Day in the Premier League. So
where do we draw the line, boys? I think we can pretty safely say that jamming in international friendlies in a pandemic is probably not that sensible. But obviously they do have broadcast deals associated with them as well, and we've seen in this pandemic just how important the broadcast deals seem to be. Like both here, both abroad and back in Australia as well. Like with Fox having the A-League over a barrel earlier on in the lockdowns. So if you cut friendlies, do you cut anything else? Do you cut the Nations League? Do you cut the Champions League, boys? Jesse?
Yeah, I think the only games which, if you really had to, just for closure, do it, are the ones that actually had any relevance to the Euros. So the Scotland game and that sort of thing. I think they just needed to close the book on the qualifiers and get it done. And that didn't necessarily have to be this window. They maybe could have done that later, but it just would have dragged on and on and on. So I can see why they would have done it the same like the Scotland game if it was just a small piece of it. But to play all the other games, particularly the guys that flew back to all like South America and things like that, if the game that they were flying to was meaningless and they're going to sit on the bench the whole time, then what's the point of that? I just don't see the point. So the Nations League for me would have got the cut because it just isn't pressing right now. It's the Euros is what everyone cares about.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse, you touched on the games that were important that teams still needed to qualify. There's actually one moment from this international break that really stood out to me was North Macedonia qualifying for their first ever major tournament, and it was Goran Pandev, who's I think turns 38 in a few weeks, scored the goal that put them into the tournament. I think it was a 115th international cap or something like that for the country, and he'll probably end up going to the Euros now as a bit of a swan song.
Very nice. And it's also good to see there'll be an Aussie at the Euros as well now. I think we touched on Scotland.
With Lyndon Dykes.
Yes, I will.
Straight out of the Gold Coast.
well, it's funny that you mentioned Lyndon Dykes because obviously, George, you mentioned Scotland before, massive, qualified for the Euros, their first major tournament in 22 years after that playoff win over Serbia. And Lyndon Dykes, of course, will be there with them. But I love the story that SBS ran where the angle was basically, Scotland qualified, but we've got Martin Boyle and Harry Suter.
Yeah. I was just about to say that.
It's a fair trade. It's a fair trade.
Yeah.
But I mean, everyone here is just praying that fans will be allowed back in the stadium for the Euros because the England-Scotland game is slated for Wembley. So that would be quite something. If we can attend.
That's a spicy group, that one, because of course Croatia is in that group as well, and given the recent history between England and Croatia, some of those games could be pretty wild.
So in conclusion, we just need to prioritise the vaccine for the fans that are going to those games.
Pfizer, come on, get them going.
Just get to the fans first.
Of course, pod darlings Hungary also qualified for the Euros. We have to give them a mention, and they've been drawn into Group F with Portugal, France, and Germany, so should be no problems for them.
Yeah, press F to pay
press
respects.
F to pay respects to Hungary. And boys, just while we're on the international break, there was soft tissue injuries, players getting around everywhere, and no one got around more than Mo Salah, who picked up COVID in Egypt attending his bro's wedding. Jesse, what did you make of this?
Yeah, it was just the cherry on top, really, wasn't it? You got people going down left, right, and centre. You've got our team losing half the defence and struggling to field a team, and then you have probably our biggest superstar going to a wedding and people getting right up in his grill, and it was just like.
Did you see footage from the wedding, Jesse?
Yeah.
Has that been released?
Yeah, he sent it to me on WhatsApp.
I'm going to say an Egyptian wedding has very few social distancing rules.
It was
my big fat Egyptian wedding.
Yeah, it was a pyramid of misunderstanding, that's for sure. And, I think Colbs. I think it was just one of the many crazy things that happened in the last 2 weeks. It's just one of those things, though. You can't sort of speak for him, but you also can. I don't know. I don't even really know what to say on the subject because you can argue for him and against him. He's obviously going on what he wants to do with his family, but he's also in the middle of a global pandemic, so you can kind of see both sides of the coin. But ultimately, it's Liverpool's loss for the next week or two.
And speaking of losses, boys, just while we're on international football was also played in the Asian Champions League, and both of the Australian teams, Sydney and Perth, also lost to both of the Shanghai teams, SIPG and Shanghai Shenhua. So Sydney went down despite going up early via Bahaja. We had the Heward Bell straight red in that for handling outside the box, and Aaron Moy got himself an assist. And didn't he look thrilled? And the Perth backup goalkeeper Tendo Valafi, his error was the difference in that Perth game as well. And that game also saw Castro back after his 9-month local walkabout. But did you know these games were going on? Did you watch them? Did anything stand out to you, Damo?
Look, I had no idea the games were even on until I saw the lineup for Perth released an hour before kickoff and thought it was a preseason friendly against a West Australian State League side. The team they put out was half their youth team. It was
and Tando Valafi.
I didn't recognize half the names, and I saw it was for the Champions League, and I think I posted in the group chat, how embarrassing is this, that this is a Champions League squad that an Australian club is sending to Asia.
Yeah, especially when you see the Shanghai squad. It's just like, okay, are we even bothering with it? Why even bother?
Yeah, and that's right, George. Like you I think you've just hit on something there, where we're fielding, the Australian teams are fielding like half strength squads, and the Asian teams are they're traveling and stacking their squads, or at least fielding pretty close to full strength squads. Is that something we can do to take these competitions, or show we're taking these competitions more seriously? And if so, will people start to care?
Well, I think these big Asian clubs, their priority is the Champions League. They want to go far and deep into the Champions League because, for whatever reason, marketing, money, endorsements, everything that comes from it, Australian clubs clearly don't have the same incentives as these big Chinese, Korean, Japanese clubs is going that deep into the Champions League. And it shows in the way A-League clubs approach the Champions League. They really just don't care.
And also, Damo, as well, at the time of usually the Champions League starting, at the end of every A-League season, they shed half their squad. So they're so underprepared. I couldn't even name half the players in any team at the moment because they're all in flux.
Is Hogg playing for Shanghai? Because if Shanghai can go anywhere near as deep as Hogg went into his wife's family, I'm sure they'll be pleased.
Well, to that point, George, Perth would have expected to line up this game with Atkinson and Naboot starting on the right-hand side. They both ended up in Melbourne because they couldn't go anywhere.
All right, boys. Just before we do get on to this week's Premier League, we've got a listener question from our mate Lee Broxham Facts on Twitter, asking who has the better player agent, George Blackwood or Daniel Arzani. And so I'll just give a bit of background. So Arzani obviously had 24 senior games before he got that European move over to Celtic, and a Socceroos call up, all on the back of those few senior games. He played one game due to that injury for Celtic, and then gets himself a move to the Eredivisie. Meanwhile, George Blackwood, I guess you could say he's got a fantastic agent, that he's just a footballer, but some of his stats, 64 games in the A-League, 13 goals, and then gets a move to Harry Kewell's Oldham, and he's now got 2 and 7. So what would you say, boys? Who's got the better agent there?
But sorry, are we comparing Arzani to Blackwood? Is that what you're trying to do?
They're agents, George. They're agents.
Oh, look,
you've got one moving on raw talent, but not playing at all and still hopping across Europe, and then you've got the other who's playing a fuckload but doing nothing and still getting a move over to Europe. So arguably he has a pretty good agent too.
I'm pretty sure that George Blackwood hasn't played in the league yet for Oldham. They've all been various cup appearances, but still he's scored a couple of goals, and surely it's a bit of favoritism from Harry Kewell. He's not getting signed if he wasn't Australian and Harry Kewell was the manager.
And also just on Oldham boys, they're under serious pressure. Every 2 or 3 days there's articles about will Harry Kewell last another few games. So
haven't they gone through 10 managers in 3 seasons or something stupid?
Yeah. And
who do you turn to when you need a goal? George Blackwood. I think he got a goal last night, boys. I'm just looking here. He got a goal against Exeter in the league. So
there you go.
Well,
no easy feat to break down Exeter. Liverpool. So there you If you do want to send us in any questions or comments, get around us at More Than A Game or mtagpodcast@gmail.com or More Than A Game on Twitter and Facebook. Coming up next, Premier League Match Day 9. So, boys, Premier League Match Day 9 kicking off with Tottenham and Manchester City, the big game of the weekend. And I don't think there's any other way that we can put this other than a Mourinho masterclass. Early goal, sit back, soak up pressure, impact sub, grab another goal, 2 shots on target, 2 goals. Good night. Thanks for coming.
Vintage Mourinho.
Boys, is Jose back, George?
Oh well, I mean, it just played out perfectly for him. So I think he's going for it. He could be back. This could be a record breaker for Tottenham. So the way they're going.
In terms of vintage, though, I mean, are we talking vintage as in maybe a Pokemon card from the 90s, or are we talking about vintage as in one of Damo's bottles of wine from the 1970s that's just sitting in his back garage? Because I look at this performance from Jose and I think that if this was a drinking game,
where is this going?
If this was a drinking game, Mourinho masterclass has to be the trigger word to make everyone drink.
Right. Yeah.
It's what Mourinho has built his coaching career on. Is he sits in, he counters, and to be honest, some of those counterattacks from Spurs were absolutely carving City apart, and they were really, really good to watch. But then the vast majority of the game, they were so boring to watch. But that's Mourinho, and that's what he does.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got up on the screen here, boys. Yeah, two shots on target, 4 attempts, 2 shots on target. City had 22 shots, 5 on target, no goals. Jose, yeah, he did bring that big bus energy. But Spurs, they do have recent form over City. Obviously, we had those matches in the Champions League in recent memory, and they even got one over them in the league. I think it was last season as well. So, is that? Yeah, is Jose just doing very well, or could Pep just be cooked?
No, I think well, 2 things. I think Harry Kane's just playing absolutely out of his skin at the moment. Like he's link up play and just he's getting around the pitch as well. It's really incredible. And as long as he's on the park, then Spurs have always got a chance to either set up a goal or score one. But I will say for City, like in the first half at least, like I was so surprised, like that they absolutely dominated. Like if they just had Aguero on the park, but they surely would have scored, and they did score. And Gabby Jesus, that was a pretty unlucky handball, and you can even talk about where do you draw the line on the handball, and they have like the cut off on the sleeve and that sort of thing. But Laporte scored, and it was a bit unlucky that was not allowed. So, and that would have been a 1-1 going into half time.
Boys, I posed this question to you in the group chat last night, but what's more fraudulent, Pep's side or his hairline at the moment?
Well, his hairline's gone. I don't think his side's completely gone. So.
But talking about, Colby, you were talking about the recent results between Spurs and City and Mourinho and Pep. I found an image that, I love a bit of chat about XG at the moment and all this football data. The aggregate XG of the last 3 games that Spurs and City have played is Man City's XG was 8.5 and Spurs was 1.2, but the aggregate goals is 6-2 to Spurs. So
yeah, I mean,
it just doesn't add up.
All I'm hearing is Mourinho masterclass.
Exactly.
Drink.
Yeah. And like De Bruyne had I counted like at least like 8 shots De Bruyne had, and they were all pretty close. Like I just feel like the whole writing off City is a little bit premature, especially with no Aguero. Like if you swap Aguero in there, I think they're going to score. So like credit to Mourinho and Spurs, they got their early goal and they looked dangerous on the break. But I don't know, I'm not writing City off completely yet.
Well, my main point of being on this podcast is basically going off on tangents and somehow coming back to the original point. And one of those is for me is I remember playing rugby when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and there was a kid that was he was very good, admittedly, but everybody used to talk about how good this kid was at running through gaps all week. And you get to the weekend, and basically when he got the ball, it was like the sea had just parted, and he ran through like the superstar that he was and scored a try. And I remember thinking to myself, therein lies basically the ideology of having too much respect for your opposition. And I feel like Manchester City have enjoyed this for the last few seasons, where basically teams have just been like, you are so good, we're going to over-respect you. And basically what they're finding now is obviously they've had their own issues with strikers being injured and a few things going on behind doors there, but teams are figuring them out to an extent now. And Guardiola is going to have to figure out what's he going to do next, because this idea of just holding possession the whole game, and then a lot of it's based on scoring a goal in the first 10 minutes and then they obliterate opposition, but they're not doing that. They're not getting that goal in the first 10 minutes, and teams are starting to believe that they can hang in there. And this was really exemplified in the Spurs game.
Well, normally, Jesse, the blueprint for beating City is for teams to just go at them as well. But Jose beat them on his own terms here. It was a classic Jose Mourinho game. Like, they had 33% of the possession, 2 shots, 2 goals, and they still got it done in that way. And that's not the way you usually beat City. And while we're on City, they've scored something like 10 goals in 8 games and are sitting 11th.
Yeah.
So, like George was saying, that they're having a lot of shots. You'd think that City would come back, but while we're on, we know sort of that City will bounce back. They're probably not going to come back and win the league, but they'll sort of come back to there or thereabouts. But what about Spurs, boys? Are they actually a realistic prospect of winning the league?
You know what's funny is when we did the pod preview,
There he is.
I reviewed Spurs and I said,
"Here we go."
I'm going to admit that I said I thought they were going to finish 5th, and then I said that a friend of mine who's in our fantasy league, Rory, who said to me that he thinks Spurs can win the league. And when I said that, everyone on the pod just laughed. Went, what an idiot! And he's kind of looking like that's a realistic option now.
But we're still sort of joking. Like when we ask, can Spurs win the league, we sort of say it with a bit of a grin as well. Like, does anyone think this is realistic, George?
I think it's moving goalposts, though, isn't it?
It's moving goalposts. Yeah. Like, I think it's like there's potential that they can, because if Kane stays on the park and plays every single minute of every game, then they are a chance. Yeah.
I think if Spurs are still in and up around first, second by mid-January, then the conversation of them winning the league becomes genuine. But until then, it's all this, Spurs can't win the league, lads, it's Tottenham, they bottle it at every chance. But if they're around the top of the league come end of January, it's very well on for them to win the league.
And it's like Leicester last year is the same thing. Like, they looked so good last year and they got crunched like 4-0 by Liverpool just after, I think it was Boxing Day or something. And they never recovered. And they were looking so hot in the first half of the season last year. So, yeah, I agree. I think it's until January, we really won't know if Spurs are the real deal. But they're doing everything they can to be in the right part of the table.
And boys, just reading out Tottenham's fixture list. So coming up next week, they've got Chelsea. The week after that,
easy win for Spurs.
They've got Arsenal. then they've got Palace. Then they've got Liverpool, and then they've got Leicester. So let's hold fire till mid-December for a month, and then because if they come through those fixtures with majority of wins and a draw or two, then they've gotten through like all the big teams, and then it's just a matter of whether they can beat those sides that they should be beating. And Mourinho,
if they get through all that, it's a Mourinho masterclass. Mark my words, boys.
Boys. Saltalk Soccer on Twitter. We just got a few comments about Spurs winning the league, boys. Saltalk Soccer on Twitter says that Spurs can't win the league. That's coming from an Arsenal fan, though. But Eduardo Vieira says, lads, it's Tottenham.
Yeah.
Damo.
Yeah, and on that point, it's Spurs. They haven't won anything since I think 2008. They won the League Cup, and then before that, who knows? But I think we talked about it at the end of the transfer window, Mourinho has brought in 6 players who are league winners, cup winners, Champions League winners. He's brought in people who have been in and around winning teams and winning environments, and that's what he does.
And Højbjerg.
Højbjerg won a Champions League at Bayern Munich. So,
oh wow,
there you go. Yeah.
There you go. That's good night. So they've also got a couple of Europa League games squashed in there between that. So if they can rotate the squad in and around there, then yeah, let's just wait and see. But I agree, the prevailing view at the moment is, lads, it's Tottenham. But in maybe a month's time, that may change.
And boys, if it's not Spurs, City are obviously sitting down in 11th. Liverpool, we're currently in the top 4, but we just don't know where they're going to end up with their crisis at the back. If it's not Spurs, who do you think realistically? Give me one more team that realistically has a chance of winning the league.
I think the only other one is Chelsea, for me.
George is shaking his head. He doesn't want to jinx it.
Let's calm down, boys. Let's calm down.
I think if we check the tape, George, I'm pretty sure you said they're going to win every cup in Europe.
You said they were going to win all 5 trophies or something.
I did.
Yeah. Biggers is not wrong. Jose knows how to win.
Jose knows how to win. I think I've got them locked in for winning the Europa League. That's what I'll say now, that Spurs will win the Europa League.
Oh, aren't they playing like Harry Winks and Dele Alli and stuff in Europa though?
Put some respect on Harry Winks.
This is what I'm saying about moving goalposts, though. Like when we made these predictions, and when you said that, and I think it was the right call at the time, George, to say that they would target the Europa League as a way to get into the Champions League. That was the situation, the context of the time. But the context now is that in 2 weeks, when
Van Dijk had an ACL.
That's when Van Dijk had an ACL. Liverpool their squad's been very unsettled. City just can't get going. It's just such a different landscape now, and it may well be again in the next 2 months. So I think Tottenham and Chelsea got every right to be confident.
Well, boys, speaking of Chelsea, they moved up to 2nd with a solid win over Newcastle. We've got the Tammy and Timo partnership, with Timo laying one on for Tammy, but looks like could have had about 3 himself. Mendy just settling right into the side. He's got 7 clean sheets in 9 games now, and Zuma looks to be back to his pre-leg break form. He looks an absolute monster. And
Chili B is just on fire, isn't he?
Just Chili B, boys.
To be fair, though, Colbs, Zuma still runs like he's got a broken leg. So,
George, what's been the key to this newfound consistency for Chelsea?
Well, I think that, and I think I talked about it a few weeks ago, but putting Timo out on the left with Tammy up front has sort of released Timo a bit more and sort of changed the focus of our attacks. But obviously, it's the goalkeeper and having a settled defence. So Reece James right back, or right wing back, Chili B on the left, and then you have Zuma and one of Thiago Silva or Rudiger, and obviously the goalkeeper. So I mean, it shouldn't be a great surprise, but like having a hologram in goals is for certain games is not helpful. It's not helpful. So you can't win games if you don't have a goalkeeper. So I think building from the back has actually been and Frank. It took Frank a few weeks. So you remember the Man U game where we didn't really attack. And we just held out for a 0-0, and the same against Sevilla in the Champions League. And now he's sort of got the defence solid, and he's sort of slowly integrating a more fluid attack with Ziyech and Werner. And it'll be interesting to see when Havertz comes back, because he's had a COVID break. So and obviously Pulisic hasn't played. So integrating those guys in will be a challenge for Frank. But
can we talk about Reece Hamas at right back?
Yeah, we can.
Reece Hamas. What I thought was really interesting is that I've got Chili B in my fantasy team, so I was keeping a close eye on him. But the traffic wasn't all going down the left last night, boys. Most of the time it was going down the right, and it was, Reece Hamas being a foil for Ziyech or vice versa. And it seems that a lot of the creativity is going down the right.
He's keeping Dave out of the team, George.
He is. Yeah, he's too good going forward. You can't, and he's so quick. Dave's a better defender, but Reece James is so fast. He kind of recovers.
And he's got one of the best crosses in the league, other than probably Alexander-Arnold, I would say.
One of the worst lids, though. That lid.
Yeah, no,
gee whiz.
That lid's like Damo's hat. He's got his hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. It actually does. It hangs the same way.
It hangs, and it's a very weird color because it's not dyed blonde. It looks like twisties are hanging from his head.
It's like if he came to Australia and keep the flies away.
Yeah. No, they've apparently been they've become quite good friends, Ziyech and James, and they've been sort of training and working on a few little things. So it's working out. So let's just keep a lid on things, but it's slowly building.
Tom's not on the pod, so I just thought I'd mention that Ziyech just got a wand of a left foot.
Absolute wand of a left foot. I was about to drop that in, Jesse. Speaking of lids on it, Damo, Steve Bruce, what's happening there? Is he just reverting to type, or does he just get found out if his players don't come up with a bit of magic?
I mean, Steve Bruce is only good at coming in late at the end of the season and keeping teams up, right? He doesn't really do well from the start of a campaign, so he's just doing what he does.
But I mean, from Newcastle's perspective, they really missed Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser. They just look like the team from last season with Joe Linton up front, and St. Maximum caused a few problems as he always does, and they had that one chance with Hayden, who could have made it 1-1. But I mean, they were pretty blunt, and Timo Werner could have had probably 5 goals if he was a bit sharper. So that
run
a bit more
from
selfish
Werner,
too.
Yeah,
that run from Werner where he set up Abraham's goal, where he just carved through. He went about 60 meters, just left defenders in his way.
The jetpacks on.
Yeah.
Turn on the afterburners.
Turn the knobs on about halfway.
I needed a cold shower after that one, boys. Ice cold.
Have we settled on what the Tamo acronym is, boys? I mean, is it Timmy? Is it Tamo? I mean, what are we going to call them? Vernaham.
Vernaham sounds some supreme cut you get from the local butcher.
Yeah, the old Tim Tam.
I don't mind a Vernaham.
Tim Tam.
Tim Tam. Yes, there it is.
Yeah, a bit nostalgic for home.
That's good. That's good.
All right.
We got that.
Keep a lid on it, boys. Let's just keep a lid on it. All right.
All right, and we'll of course have more Chelsea chat in the coming weeks with George on lockdown and a captive host for More Than a Game. So, and with Chelsea's form going the way it is, we'll have to keep checking back in with you, George.
Yeah, I'll be in the shower, boys, just cooling off. Don't worry.
Boys, meanwhile, United, it took a penalty from Bruno Fernandes to see United finally off the mark at Old Trafford, but. Are we convinced by them? Is anyone convinced by this Man United team?
I'll tell you what, I'm sick of not watching Man United games, looking at the results and just seeing
penalty. 2 penalties. It's the retaken penalty that's starting to piss me off. How many times?
Fernandez P every single time. I'm like, this guy.
Well, seriously, they had a stone cold pen in this game against them overturned. They get that. The penalty that they did get was a point blank handball, which you see given sometimes and sometimes not. And then that penalty miss retaken as well. I mean, he jumped about.
The keeper was about
2 feet off his line, but he almost jumped to the 6. He almost jumped onto the bloody penalty spot. It was a bloody leap.
He was doing the Tim Krul. He was doing the Tim Krul, psyching him out. He just stayed there.
It's more the error at the other end of the field, though, is what you're saying, the Colbs, isn't it? It's the it's Fernandes almost taking out the other guy's leg, chopping it in half, and not getting the penalty against him.
Yeah. Conor Gallagher who clearly got chopped. It looked like.
And if we're talking about United's form, boys, they've got 3 wins in their last 5, yes, but you got to remember that one of them was that pretty flattering scoreline against Everton, that underwhelming loss against Arsenal, plus that embarrassing away loss to Istanbul. Yeah, are they flattering to deceive or just papering over the cracks?
I think sometimes it's a case of they're managing to get results while they're playing horribly, and you would have to imagine. you would have to imagine with the squad, the players they've got, you can put together good performances. The depth of the squad and the talent. Someone like, was it Martial had his first shot on target in the league, and it's been 9 games. This is a guy who he can be a world beater on his day.
Yeah,
And
Their
he was
forwards are
so
shooting like stormtroopers. They're just having so many shots. Not converting any.
Yeah, he was awful last night, Martial. He was sulking at his sulkiest best around the pitch.
Did he have gloves on?
He had gloves on. Welcome to United, Dembele.
Man United surely have got to come
Skills
good.
and tricks 2020.
They've surely got to come good at some point is what I'm seeing. And if they're getting points while not playing well, then I think they'll still end up around the top 4 because they're due to start playing good football.
Well, if they can play against West Bromwich Norwich every week, then I think they'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's good.
I did a double take when I saw
disgusting.
But yeah, I mean, I do not trust their defense at all. Like they've got so many mistakes in them, so they're going to have to score more goals than they concede in bigger games. I think.
I think if you compare them to Chelsea in the sense that Chelsea's on the trajectory up, you can see that when Chelsea has a poor game, that there's just something about the system that's not working. But you can see that all the sort of players are there to make it work, and you feel like it's a matter of time before they start to click. And you've seen that as the season's gone on. Whereas United, when are they ever really going to get better as a squad when you've got people that are sulky, who basically sometimes will turn up and not turn up, and then you've got Van der Beek is the same player as Fernandes, hired very closely together in 2 windows. Doesn't make any sense. There's no point to it. Like Chilwell is a good signing for Chelsea. You understand why they make that signing. Chelsea's on the up, whereas Manchester United is just getting these results. But the players that are there, it doesn't make any sense to me why they're hiring them. Like Cavani is just the most vintage Man United signing. Just paper.
Pogba wasn't in the squad this week either. So it's just, I don't know. And he played
correlates to wins.
Yeah, but he played well for France. There was all that, he was playing well for France in the break, and there was all this talk about, he's got to go back to Man U and replicate that form, and then he's not even in the squad. So I don't know whether he had an injury or it's just bizarre. And Solskjaer said, it's Fred, Matic, or McTominay in midfield with Fernandes as the sort of 10. So I don't know where Pogba fits in.
Man United every transfer window seem that more panic buying than Britain at the moment going back into lockdown.
Toilet paper in a pandemic.
Well, they need a lot of toilet paper because their back four just shits themselves every time anybody starts to press them. There was one moment last night where Maguire just turned himself into a cul-de-sac and then he just shat himself and lost position. And you're like, mate, I mean, why were you venturing upfield that far in the first place?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So it sort of in summation, it just doesn't seem like anyone trusts Man U, but somehow they might sneak into the top 4 because everyone else is so shit.
Well, boys, after a flying start to the season, everyone else's other favourite team to gas up as title hopefuls, Aston Villa, went down 2-1 to Big Matty Ryan's Brighton.
You mean big that guy Welbs?
That guy Welbs, 5 minutes in or something, running 50 metres and chipping the keeper. It was pretty delicious goal. And then even more delicious was Solly March's curled effort from the top of the box. Matty Ryan had a few big saves, but let's talk about Villa, boys. Everyone's been gassing them up for the past couple of weeks. Are they still hot or not?
I think Villa are finding their place. I feel like they had a lot of luck through that run of good results. They had a good run of fixtures, and a lot of things just seemed to go their way. Villa will find their spot, around mid-table, lower, a little bit lower. It's inevitable now. There's kind of like a real honeymoon period of all their new signings and everything's going well. It's died off now, and the hype is all gone.
Ross Barkley got injured.
Yeah, I was going to say Ross Barkley, who's been the real X factor for them, along with Grealish, and then their link up. Him going off was probably a bit of a blow.
Nature's healing.
Yeah. Or like Ross Barkley getting injured is not a big surprise after a few
things going back to normal.
Things going back to normal. And obviously, are we going to talk about the end to this game, boys?
Go on.
Which part?
Go on.
Are we going to talk about the VAR, the penalty or the non-penalty?
I mean, this is the conversation like 9 times a week at the moment.
Yeah.
The VAR at the end of the game. I'm kind of sick of this conversation.
Where he sort of got like one toe on the ball and then the other player dives and throws himself about a meter up into the air and then onto the ground. I think it looked like the right decision to me. The ref to not call it. So obviously Dean Smith didn't see it that way and he was blowing up something pretty large, but looked pretty uncontroversial to me. Really.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if he's got the toe on the ball first, barely made contact with the player as well. So you can't even say that it was really reckless or anything like that. So like play on for me.
Yeah, fair play, and bad for my fantasy with Tarek Lamptey getting sent off.
Yeah, mine too.
Well, I had Lo Celso on the bench, so press F to pay respects.
Yeah, nice. All right, boys. Still to come, Champions League group stage match day 4 coming up. So all 4 Premier League teams will be back in action midweek this week for match day 4 of the Champions League group stage, with Chelsea away at Rennes, United hosting Istanbul, Liverpool at home to Atalanta, and City away at Olympiacos. But plenty of other big matches, boys. What should we be watching out for, George?
Boys, this match day is basically the flip or the reverse of the match day we discussed 2 weeks ago. So the big game for me is Inter Real Madrid. So if you want to have a look at I'm pulling up their group. I don't know if Colby can bring it up on the chat, but so you've got Borussia Mönchengladbach on 5 points. You've got Shakhtar on 4 points. You've got Real on 4 points, and you've got Inter on 2 points. So, like, if Inter don't win this game, they're as basically good as done. And then you've got Real, and then the winner of Mönchengladbach and Schalke. You know, they're gunning for they're gunning for a one or two spot. So you've got a real logjam in Group B. So I think that's a really exciting game, because if Real lose as well, then you know you've got Inter going on 5 points, and then you've got them chasing Shakhtar and Mönchengladbach. So it's pretty. Go on, Damo.
It's kind of a similar situation with Leipzig and PSG.
Exactly.
Because if Leipzig get a draw or even a win against PSG, it's pretty much the knockout stage is all but over for PSG. You know, they'd be then 4 or even 6 points off the top 2. And you know, if that does happen, does the mass exodus from PSG begin if they don't go into the knockout stages?
Last year's finalists.
Mbappe 2021 to Liverpool's happening. I called it 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I mean,
shirt number.
The only thing that might save them is, you know, Man U's topping that group, so you never know what they're going.
Yeah.
With. But yeah, agree. So I think they're the 2 groups that I'm probably most interested in.
It's already been conversations between. Yeah, well, there's already been conversations between James Milner's agent and Mbappe to swap over the shirt number 7 at Liverpool. So that should be a seamless transition.
Another game that kind of stood out to me was Ajax versus Midtjylland, which again, Midtjylland are on the bottom. I think they got 0 points, but if they win, it takes the group just to like the Inter Real group, a log jam of teams on between 4 and 2 points, all of them.
Because it's Atalanta and Liverpool as well. So yeah, I mean, Liverpool are topping the group on 9, but Ajax and Atalanta are on 4 points. So,
and if Midtjylland can get a win, you would imagine they're right in touching distance of then going on and trying to make the knockout stages. And I'd love to see my boy Mobile bang in a couple of goals in the Champions League. So
cometh the hour, cometh Lube Mobile.
Yeah, I mean, I can't.
What's the phone number?
13 32.
Yeah. I can't see Michelin getting through there, but they might be able to. I mean, Atalanta and Ajax are probably too strong for them, and you'd think one of those two. I think probably. What do we think? Atalanta or Ajax to come second in that group, boys?
I'm going to say Atalanta. I just don't think Ajax have got it in them this season after a couple of big player losses.
Yeah, I agree. And Atalanta are pretty dangerous. It seems like they can score as many goals as they want in most games. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think Ajax have probably just run out of steam a little bit there. And so we've probably tackled who's it a big game for, but we're sort of getting on now to who do you think will do surprisingly well this year, boys? Who's your sort of smoky to make a run?
I'll say Borussia Mönchengladbach. So I started, and I'm not going to claim them, boys. I'm not going to be that bloke. But I will say I did watch a lot of their games when the Bundesliga was restarted and nothing else was back on, and they've got they've got Marcus Thuram out on the left, and they've got a very good striker, Alisson Player, and very quick off the mark. So I think they'll do. They already are doing pretty well, and I think they'll cause some problems in the next round.
I think the only thing about Mönchengladbach is that they leak a lot of goals.
Yeah,
they've conceded a lot of goals in the league. I'm not sure exactly how many it is, and they're just one of those teams, kind of akin to Leeds. They go out there and just free for all. If we can score more, we can win, but we don't really care about defending.
Well, Damo, what a lot of people don't realise is Mönchengladbach actually means sieve in German. No. Actually, I've nothing to back that up. Actually, but that group is probably the tastiest group, really. Like, you look at that and you just look at some of the teams that are in it, and the Real Madrid shooting themselves at home has opened that wide open. So it's definitely interesting.
George, you said you didn't want to claim them. I guarantee Tommy's not on the pod today, but he'll claim them. He's got the shirt that took like 9 months to arrive, and
I think there's still a shirt somewhere in Andy's
team.
Yeah. I think Tommy's got a shirt sitting in London somewhere as well in Andy's office, which hasn't opened in 6 months. So we'll keep updating you on the. I think it's a Lazio shirt, if I'm wrong. But
and George, you mentioned Gladbach, but what about Borussia Dortmund? I mean, they could well be a bit of a smoky themselves. I know we sort of, that they seem as if they should be a little bit beyond that. But I mean, do we think that they could make a run?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're topping their group at the moment. They've got Lazio in their group. Bruges are sort of on 4 points as well. Dortmund are on 6 and Lazio are on 5. So you'd think Dortmund are playing Bruges this round. So you'd think with a win there, that would probably end Bruges' chances, and that should get them through the next phase. I think the issue with Dortmund's always been their defence, and same as Gladbach, they're conceding goals. So they'll try and score more than they can concede. And
a quick note on Dortmund is just to jump back on who it's a big game for. I started the pod with my moment of the week being Moukoko getting his first appearance for Dortmund, and I think that he might even be in line to start against Bruges midweek, which would be enormous for a kid he'd be 16 and 4 days old if he gets to start in the Champions League midweek, and I think that would make him the youngest Champions League starter of all time. It's just, wild for a kid to be that good.
If he can be anywhere near as good as Moise Kean, I'll tip my hat to him.
He could turn into another Bojan Kirkic. He was the youngest. He broke all Messi's records, and I don't even know where he's at now. Probably at Stoke in League One.
Yeah, is he still at Stoke? Yeah.
That's a whole other pod, boys.
That's a whole pod.
Wonder kids.
Yeah. Or Wonder kids.
Wonder kids. Jesse, what about you, mate? Who do you see as being a bit of a smoky in this year's Champions League?
Well, it seems like a strange thing to say, but I kind of almost feel like Leipzig. I mean, they made it through to the semis last year, so I guess, they're established now. But it's similar to what we just talked about with Borussia Dortmund in the sense that you kind of expect these teams to be there or thereabouts, but you look at the group that Leipzig's in, And you think, well, PSG and United went off to a flying start, got pulled back into the pack by Istanbul. So you sort of look at Leipzig now and you think if they can survive that group and get through it's going to be interesting to see how far they can go, because last year they were so seemingly reliant on Werner. They don't have Werner this year. So, and also to get cut to ribbons like they did against United and to still survive the group would be a pretty big achievement considering PSG's in that group.
I think it's always so hard to pick, who you think's going to do well, because you can pick who might go through to the group stages, but then you can get some teams that just get a breeze of a run all the way through to the semi-finals, and then you got other teams that have got to play probably the 2 or 3 favorites just to get to the semi-finals. So you never really know. If you get a good run, you can go all the way.
It'd be a Cinderella story if Real Madrid could get through. I mean, the small club, Real Madrid.
And then they'll probably draw like Midtjylland who just make it through.
Yeah.
But City this year, speaking of favourable runs in cup competitions, Manchester City boys, they're 3 from 3 and, just quietly flying under the radar.
I just don't think City can win the Champions League. That's their hoodoo. It's for Liverpool for so many years, it was the Premier League. And I feel like for City, for however many years, it's going to be the Champions League. They'll win leagues here and there. And the Champions League, kind of like PSG, is going to be that one thing that just is forever eluding them.
What a difference 6 months makes. I was going to say a year, but it was only about, 4 or 5 months ago that we had the Champions League finals and City were there. And, it only takes a Sterling open goal miss to put seeds of doubt in their minds again to whether or not City can actually go on and win it. And now we're talking about it like they really don't have a chance. Whereas as recently as like 6 months ago, everybody thought they could go on and win it. So it just
with the panic swirls around his face,
so big changes.
Do we still all think Bayern Munich are the faves, or?
Oh, they've got to be.
I think so.
I think so. Clear favourites, yeah. They're just untouchable right now. Match day 4 of the Champions League group stage continues this Wednesday and Thursday. Well, thanks again for listening, everyone. And if you've enjoyed the show today, we'd love it if you could give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's not only great to see what you think of the pod, but also helps us get rid of that weird basketball podcast that we mentioned. Stopped doing EPs back in 2015, and we just really like to get rid of them. And you can also follow us on Twitter or Facebook, or subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video version of this pod, which drops about a day before the pod comes out. Links to all of those in the show notes. Next week, match day 10 of the Premier League and the Champions League continues. Until then, enjoy the football.